Good morning, church. Man, it's good again to be here. I want to apologize. My family is not here because SWAP is doing the main service at our church, at Mother Church. So they're tied up there. The title of our message today is The Borderline Battle. Borderline Battle. This is in reference to the struggle that happened in Moses' life at the borderline as the children of Israel were about to cross the river Jordan. This is the second time they had come there, and this time Moses would not be allowed to cross over with the children of Israel. I therefore want to call for your attention to come with me to the book of Numbers, chapter 20, and read why Moses was not allowed to go into the promised land. Numbers chapter 20. I'm going to read from I'll read verses 2 to 12 and talk a little bit in the process. I'm using the New King James Version. Numbers chapter 20, verse 1 says, Then the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zinin the first month, and the people stayed at Kadesh. And Miriam died there and was buried. Miriam is the sister of Moses and Aaron. Now there was no water for the congregation, so they gathered together against Moses and Aaron. And the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, If only we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. Why have you brought up the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness, and we and our animals should die here? And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place of gain or figs or vines or pomegranates, nor is there any water to drink. This is a lot of complaining, a lot of murmuring, a lot of discontentment. It is typical of the children of Israel in their journey that any time they were faced with something that was challenging, they thought of Egypt. They thought of going back. They thought of the beauty and the enjoyment they had in the land of bondage. What a contrast. It is typical for us too, as human beings. Anytime we are faced with just a little discomfort, we think of the past. If only I didn't get married to you. If only I didn't have you as my child. If only I never met you or knew you. My life would be better. These are some of the arguments we have. If only I wasn't given this job, look at what it has done for me. Typical of us human beings. They thought of Egypt, preferring to die like those that died in the past. Now look at what Moses did and Aaron. They decided to go to the Lord. And as they went before the Lord, let's go to verse 10. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. This is after God spoke with Aaron and told them what to do. And Moses and Aaron gather these people before the rock. And he said to them, Hear now, you rebels. That's Moses. Because they have complained. They have rebelled. See, these are the people that witnessed God's miracles. They knew what God was capable of doing. They had just overcome lots of hurdles in the process. I was reading on the account of the children of Israel crossing the Red Sea. It just fascinates me. I never get to stop wondering just how that happened. And the more I read it, the more I find the insights of just how wonderful God was with them. They did it practically. It's not an account that I'm reading on my own, but in their case, they saw it happen. They went through it. They looked at the waters standing, creating a pathway for them on a dry land. I mean, I would think they shouldn't have forgotten that. I would think I would totally depend on God in any circumstance. But we are human beings. That's exactly what is happening here. They're just thirsty. They do not have water to drink. And they go all the way back there and bringing in the past to argue. And that's why Moses is talking to them like this. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. And he said to them, how? Here now, you rebels. Must we bring water for you out of this rock? Hold on, Moses. Did you hear these words? Must we? It's now Moses talking. Who are we here? It's Moses and Aaron. Must we bring water for you out of this rock? Who is the rock? It's Jesus himself right there. In short, they are saying, we will make Jesus Christ bring water for you. Us, me and Aaron, because we are capable of doing that. Then Moses lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. If only his eyes had opened up, he would have seen that he was striking the Son of God twice. And water came out abundantly. And the congregation and their animals drank. What comes to my mind is that there are so many times that we take credit over what God has done. See, God is so gracious. Sometimes we take presumptuous actions, and they appear to work. But you see, God is so kind. He lets certain things go on. For his name's sake, we shouldn't mix up these two. For his name's sake, the goodness of him is never withheld. For his name's sake. But sometimes we take credit as human beings for what God does. That's what happened to Moses here. Verse 12 says, Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. Because you did not believe me, to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. These are very, very powerful words from God himself. Because you did not hear me, you didn't heed me, he didn't allow them to see or lead the children of Israel into the promised land. It may look like a simple thing, but you see, God is a righteous judge. He's a merciful God at the same time. You see, justice and mercy sometimes can be very contradictory. When God exercises his mercy, there's always justice coupled with it. These two are not separable in the eyes of God. Point. Sometimes we have to face the consequences of our actions. God will allow us to go through the consequences of our actions, even when he has forgiven us. We are forgiven, but we will go through the consequences. Adam and Eve, the same thing happened. When they disobeyed God, God said to the ground, you shall surely return. But Adam and Eve are the parents of the whole world. And Eve was named after that sin. And Eve means the mother of nations. You are blessed. And we know from the Bible they will go to heaven. Let's not take for granted the mercies of God. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 34. 34. Deuteronomy chapter 34. Let me just talk a little bit here. At this point, the children of Israel are right there at the border, the borderline. And this is the battle that we are going to talk about. Moses has led the children up to that point. They have wandered for 40 years. They had come the first time, they went back, wandered again. A lot of them died. At this point, we are seeing that the two, Caleb, Joshua and Caleb, Moses and Aaron, are the oldest of these people. But at this point in time, it is only three. Moses, Joshua, and Caleb. Aaron had already died. They are right at the borderline. They are about to cross. And as they are about to cross, the Lord speaks to Moses. And he tells him that, remember, I told you that you would not lead the children of Israel across. This is the time now that you have to go to sleep. Moses calls the congregation, and they gather right there at the congregation. And Moses speaks and addresses the congregation and blesses them. Let me back up a little bit. We go to chapter 33 and just read before we come to 34. Chapter 33, verse 26. Moses is speaking. The congregation is seated. And they know at this point that Moses is going to die. Now, what is interesting here is that I don't know how Moses was actually processing the whole process. Moses was not dim in sight, meaning his sight was strong. He wasn't too old to a point where you say he's about to die. He wasn't sick. He was a strong man. Yet he knew he was going to die. I think that's kind of a puzzling situation. You know you are going to die for sure because God has told you. I think it's unsettling to a human being. There's this battle. We really don't want to die. Even when we know we are going to heaven, it's kind of a struggle. We really don't want. It's against our human want. But Moses at this point has reconciled the whole situation. He's ready to go and die. He blesses the tribes. He speaks to the leaders. He talks to the elders. And everybody, they're sitting at the congregation's temple. And the discussion takes place. Moses charges Joshua and says, Joshua, you are going to take over. Be of good courage. And the Lord is going to be with you. But I want to look at these words towards the end of his address. 33 verse 26 says, there is no one like the God of Jeshurun, who rides the heavens to help you, and in his excellence on the clouds. This is poetry, but this is a powerful speech. Moses is telling these people that you have a God who rides the heavens to your help, who is in charge. He can command whatever resources are in heaven to come to your help. This is the God I want to live with you in your minds so that you can trust and believe in. Verse 27 says, the eternal God is your refuge. He is your place of safety. He is the place of your hiding. If you're troubled, you need to go to the place of safety, a refuge. And underneath are the everlasting arms. You know, hands for activity, for help. He's trying to let them know that God will do things for you in times of need. He is your refuge, He is your comfort. He will thrust out the enemy from before you and will say, destroy, just to speak. That's how mighty this God I want you to trust and believe is. Then Israel shall dwell in safety. The fountain of Jacob alone, in a land of grain and new wine. His heavens shall also drop dew. He's talking about the economy here, providing for them. He's gone ahead. What a powerful economy that God provides. You will be supplied with your daily needs. He'll take care of you. He'll give you the foods and everything that you need. This is the God that I want you to trust. Verse 29 says, happy are you, O Israel, or blessed are you, O Israel, who is like you, a people saved by the Lord. Who is like us, the spiritual Israel, a people saved by the Lord, the shield of your help and the sword of your majesty. He's simply saying that God is your own weapon to destroy, to overcome, to protect, to provide. Don't forsake him. Your enemies shall submit to you, and you shall tread down the high places. What an assurance. And when Moses had spoken these words, he turns around and walks to his destination of death, leaving behind the people he cared for, leaving behind the people that at one point he said, if you don't save these people, Lord, just strike me dead, blot me out. The people he loved and labored for so much, he turns around, gives them their back, and walks away. There's nowhere where it talks about his children, his wife, but it talks about the congregation as a group. And Moses walks. Chapter 34, verse 1. The Bible says, then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead, as far as Dan, O Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, as far as the west sea, the south and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zor. Then the Lord said to him, this is the land of which I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there. I was wondering, I said, what is Moses seeing here? What is he looking at? I grew up in Zambia, those that do not know, and my tribe is Tonga. We keep a lot of livestock, cows, goats. We are farmers, basically. And my grandfather's place, where I was born, actually, my grandfather was a headman. I don't know if you know, in the African situations, you have a headman who is like a head of a clan. Then you have a chief where there are so many clans under. Then from the chief, you have a paramount chief. It's governance stages. This is within the tribe. And then you come to a district, then you come to a province, which you call a state here. That's how governance goes. So where my grandfather lived, my father was the firstborn in that family. There are mountains, really tall mountains. It's called the Zambezi Escarpment, the cliffs. So you have folding mountains, rows and rows of mountains. So people settle between mountains at the bottom where it is flat, and there are rivers that flow. It's so beautiful because the lands are fertile. Because whenever it rains, it washes down all the leaves and everything that dies down to the fields. And you really don't need to put any fertilizers. The land is just so fertile, and there's a lot of grass on the mountain sides and on the views. That's where we took our animals to graze. So that reminded me of that situation where I come from. But I wanted to know more. I wanted to understand more. Therefore, I looked this up in the spirit of prophecy. I'm going to quote Patrick's and Prophets, page 472, on the account of what Moses was looking at here. It says, and now a panoramic view of the land of promise was presented to him. A panoramic view. Those of you that have cameras on your phones, you can take a panoramic picture, which you can start from here and take it all the way around. So Moses is taken here, according to what we were reading. He sees on the west the seas. This is the physical geography. On the west, the seas. To the north, the mountains. To the east, he sees the valleys of Moab. And to the south, he sees the deserts. And in between, this is the land that God has promised to them. And he's looking there. He sees it. But in this panoramic view, he's taken beyond just looking at the geography, the physical. Let me continue reading. And now a panoramic view of the land of promise was presented to him. Every part of the country was spread out before him, not faint and uncertain in the dim distance, but standing out clear, distinct, and beautiful to his delighted vision. In this scene, it was presented, not as it then appeared, but as it would become, with the God's blessing upon it, in the possession of Israel. He seemed to be looking upon a second Eden. There were mountains clothed with cedars of Lebanon, hills gray with olives and fragrant with the odor of the vine, wide green plains, bright with flowers and rich in fruitfulness. Here, the palm trees of the tropics, their waving fields of wheat and barley, sun valleys and musical with the ripple of brooks and songs of birds, goodly cities and fair gardens, lakes rich in abundance of the seas, grazing flocks upon the hillsides, and even amid the rocks, the wild bees hoarded treasures. It was indeed such a land as Moses, inspired by the Spirit of God, had described to Israel. Blessed of the Lord, for the precious things of heaven, for the dew, and for the deep that couches beneath, and for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the chief things of the ancient mountains, and for the precious things of the earth, and fullness thereof. So he sees all this ahead of time. It's like he's been given a history of life in the future. In fact, he went as far as seeing them also sinning, going astray, being taken into captivity, being brought back to the land, sinning again and rebelling, to the point where he saw the Son of Man, Jesus Christ, crucified. And the spirit of prophet says that Moses cried, and he had heavy tears that dropped when he looked at the death of Christ on the cross. He's taken over to the point of the disciples and the apostles and the growth of the church. He's taken to the point of the coming of the Son of Man. And we are told then his sight was brought back into the physical where he was there. And he got tired and he lay down. And that's how Moses died. To this time, the Bible tells us nobody knows where his grave was. The angels buried Moses. Upon seeing this, the devil rejoiced. Because the devil's idea and thinking is limited. Remember, when Adam and Eve sinned, the devil was not involved in the consultations that were taking place between God the Father and the Son on the aspect of saving mankind. Christ and the Father communed 3 times, And the third time when Christ came out of the presence of the Father, there was joy on his countenance. The devil didn't know what was going to happen. Christ was to come as a sacrifice. So when Moses died and was buried, the devil, to him, that was victory. It was victory. What a way of looking at things. What a way of looking at things, indeed, by the devil. This is victory according to the devil. Because Jesus Christ has lost it. This is the great leader of the chosen people. And he's lying right here. And I'm sitting on his tomb. And I have evil angels surrounding it. We are guarding it. He is a prisoner of death. What then? Mankind is lost. I have won. But the spirit of prophecy, the Bible tells us that Jesus Christ descended. He came with his angels. And when he came to approach that grave, the devil and his angels were scared. But the devil brought out an argument before God. Let's go to the book of Jude, our memory text. Jude, verse 9. And just read there. Jude, verse 9. There is a battle right there, and there's an argument that is ensuing. Verse 9 says, Yet Michael, the archangel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against him a reviling accusation, but said, The Lord rebuke you. There's a battle over the grave. I love it how Ellen White writes it. Again, in the book Patriarchs and Prophets, page 478. The Spirit of Prophet says, For the first time, Christ was about to give life to the dead. To give life to the dead. This is the first account of that. As the Prince of Life and the Shining Ones approached the grave, Satan was alarmed for his supremacy. With his evil angels, he stood to dispute an invasion of the territory that he claimed as his own. He boasted that the servant of God had become his prisoner, referring to Moses. He declared that even Moses was not able to keep the law of God, that he had taken to himself the glory due to Jehovah. You know what he's saying here? He's saying, this is exactly what I did in heaven. And that's why I was cast out. If that's what happened to me, this is what has happened to Moses. So he's lost forever. The very sin which had caused Satan's banishment from heaven, and by transgression had come under the dominion of Satan. That's what he concludes. The arch-traitor reiterated the original charges that he had made against the divine government and repeated his complaints of God's injustice toward him. That's the battle that is happening. This is the evil. This is the argument in higher places. It's about principalities. It's not a physical war. And as this argument goes on, Jesus Christ never rebukes him. If he wanted, he could have told him, look, you caused Adam and Eve to sin. You led a third of angels to rebel in heaven. You have caused Cain to kill his brother because you are the killer. You are the destroyer. You are a thief. But Christ never said that. All he did is, the Lord rebuke you. And he raised Moses right there and took him to heaven. This brings me to the Mount of Transfiguration. You can read this in Matthew 17, 1-7, or Mark chapter 9, 2-8, somewhere there. As John, Peter, and James and Jesus Christ went to the high mountain. And as they were sitting there, Jesus Christ began to shine with glory, bright. And as they were beholding, the disciples beholding Jesus Christ, they saw Moses on one side and Elijah on the other side. And Peter, if you remember, he was like, Lord, let's just build a monument here and stay here forever. Moses is a representation of those that will die in Christ. You know what Moses did before he died at the mountain there? He looked back to his life and saw all the things that he had done, how mightily the Lord had used him. And he came to this one point where he rebelled against God and confessed his sin. And the Lord forgave him. But the devil didn't know that the Lord had forgiven him. Neither does he know that we have been forgiven. He thinks we are his. But God raised Moses. It's a symbolism of those that believe in Christ, that even though we die, we shall resurrect like Moses rose from the dead. Right now we are engaged in this battle. We are at the borderline. Christ is coming soon. There are these philosophies. There are these issues that are battling. There are these issues young people are faced with. The older people are like. The world is so confused. I'll tell you that I believe strongly the lines of demarcation have to be very clear between Christians and non-Christians, especially now. It has never been that clear until we look at our society. Just look at the political situations. Just look at the laws that are coming into our land. People are asking for legalization of drugs. Men marrying women has become law in this country. It's acceptable. Bathrooms are being created everywhere. Schools, children are confused with what they are being taught. They are saying it's all about love. What is love? What do they mean by that? Look at the toys that children have. They're all about me, me, me. Where is God in everything? These are the arguments that we are faced with as we live in the last days. But like Moses, we need to look up to God. It's a challenge to realize that Moses knew he was going to die. And he obeyed. Just like Christ obeyed even unto the point of death. The challenge we have, saints, is that shall we be faithful even to the end of time? Regardless of what happens in this world, we have a better home than the earthly Canaan that Moses looked at. That's why God took him over beyond the physical environment. He took him over up to the point of New Jerusalem, the beautiful home, a land of no sin, no pain, no suffering. That's where we are headed. That's our home. That's where our thinking should be. If you remember last Sabbath's lesson, there were questions like, how do we, as Christians, how do we reconcile this? Should we force it on other people? This belief of Christ? No, we just have to speak. The power comes from God. He's the one who gives power to the truth as it is. We don't have to. We just have to be obedient and vessels through which God is going to demonstrate his power. And he did that through Moses. And when time came for the children of Israel to cross, we are told, Joshua told the people to prepare themselves. They cleaned themselves up. They had to have food for 3 days' supply. We are told that the Ark of the Covenant was to be carried by men a half mile ahead of them. And it was springtime, at the point where the river Jordan is the fullest. It's the most fierce because the ice has melted and it is overflowing the banks. And that's the time God wants to deliver his people. And until their feet touched into the river did not part. And until, friends, we go by faith, that inch where it doesn't make sense to human beings. Because faith shouldn't make sense. Faith is about surrendering ourselves unto God that He is doing the right thing, even if our own logic doesn't agree with it. They stepped forward, and we're told the upper part of the river receded while the bottom flowed over, and the path was created where the children of Israel passed. This is the surging evil that we are faced with. We just have to have faith to go over as Christ is about to come. And they crossed. In the middle of the river, the men bearing the Ark of the Covenant stood still, and everyone passed. And 12 men that were previously selected picked a stone each, and when they reached the western side of it, they built a monument as evidence of where they crossed. This happened. History has facts about it. It's not a theory. It's real. And when they came out of the water, the fierce river surged its natural currents again. We have a God who is loving and willing to save us. Are we willing to be saved? My appeal is that as we are at the borderline, where the surging is fierce, some of us might go to sleep. Others will cross over that land as living, only to be transformed. We have to remain faithful. Trust in God. We must be separate even if we are in this world, for God is coming soon to save us. May God bless us. Amen.